And
Captioning on too. Is that cool?
that's fine. Okay. And yeah, they're from Glasgow, Kentucky. And we've been up there to visit them, and this is their second time to come down here. And I'll be talking. We made a little video this morning of the books that they've written, just to give you an overview of that, and books that they're helping to sponsor, I guess, from some other people. And but they're going to be teaching us on, as you see here, the Zeta Sabbath calendar. The Jewish people and Messianic believers have been following ever since we got into this about 12 years ago. We've been following the Hillel Hebrew calendar.
Okay.
Julie's vacuuming, or something happened. It may have clicked on and she doesn't know. Tell
She's vacuuming.
Julie it's a high holy day.
No vacuum, Julie.
Julie, the vacuum cleaner is making a lot of noise in here. Okay, it's a central vacuum cleaner. She was just popping it on.
I'm sorry, it was stuff all, so I'm sorry, I just had to get that.
Yeah, it was an ox in the ditch, right? Okay.
That's a pretty powerful big.
Yeah, it sucked that ox right out of it. Okay, but so we've been following the Jewish Hebrew calendar. That's all we've known. And but Bill and Karen are going to teach us all how the Zedekiah calendar really has come to the forefront now. And many people are understanding this. It's been there all along. And so you're going to go into the whole history of all this. So I'm going to just turn this over to them. Thank y'all for being here.
Well, hello. And,
One more coming too, if you see my kind of distracted. Gotta get up and make sure she's parked.
Okay. Patrice is coming too. So let's see. I'm gonna spotlight you two, so you will be seen maybe a little bit better.
I was Miss Callie, she brought those.
Yep.
Closed captioning
I
going
told her
on.
last night, I said, Brian,
Did you see that?
Carolyn said I should have eaten breakfast, so she's in there. Go ahead and eat whatever you want.
I can't.
Just know there's no secrets. You're on caption up there.
I know it.
grab your bananas,
Okay.
everybody.
Where were those captions?
Turn off live captions.
Turn off live cap. Okay. No.
Hey, we're gonna have food coming live from you today at Dan and Julie Williams' house. What's a little muggy?
There we go. Okay.
every Passover is uniquely different. This has been a very interesting Passover. Well, we got rain last night. I was watching this song that we were just playing. I'm thinking, boy, the rain did come.
We almost did the ark.
Yeah, so that's why we're in the house today. We're not out at the original plan, and made all kinds of changes here.
I'm sorry.
But no matter what the enemy can throw at us, our God is mightier than him. So we're in the park here. We got it made. We're on the right side of things. It's nice knowing in these kinds of days, the things that are going on, you're on the right side of things if you're following Yahweh. And if you're praying to him and following his word, it's going to work out, folks. So today we're going to talk a little bit about this Zedekiah calendar. Some of you are very familiar with it. Some of you have never even heard of it. Biblical calendar system may seem like, when you're first coming into understanding Torah, it may seem like, okay, a calendar, yeah, all right. It's just something you hang on the wall, and you keep track of the days of the week, and it's no big deal. We all live according to a calendar, right? And we have to put up with it. Time for me has always been an obstacle that I have to overcome. And when it came to the biblical calendar, we had a journey that took us through several phases of different ways of calculating the beginning of the months, the beginning of the year. It's all very kind of ambiguous, but generally speaking, it all involves something to do with the moon to start the month. And the year we knew started something around this time of year in the spring when the barley's getting ripe. And we know there's other signs that pointed to it. So we had 2 or 3 methods that we thought we had it pretty well figured out
Well,
by, you know, a few
And
years ago.
we understood that it was the Jewish people who were grounded and rooted in the festivals and how to observe them and when to observe them.
Right.
And that's why we went to the Jewish calendar to
They've
try
been
to
doing
get
it for
grip on
thousands of
this.
years. They must know what they're doing.
Yeah, well, that's when we started finding out that it might not be the ancient calendar that we should.
Well,
Really be
scholars have
looking at.
known about this calendar since the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, and they came, well, since they started to open up there, the Dead Sea Scrolls were found in 1948, and Jordan kept them kind of under wraps for quite a while, but I think it was in the 90s, they were made available to scholars, and so it's been 20, 30 years, about 30 years or so, that scholars have known about this calendar, and we first started to find out about it.
Can I
Yeah,
have
one question before you get too
Yeah.
far. For some new people, why is it even important?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm getting to.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure.
Because it seems like, you know, a calendar, it's just a simple, basic, you know, so your calendar, you know, you just go by what is, you know, just, but why is it important? Well, I'm going to talk more about that this coming Sabbath. Actually, when we get back home, we have a presentation that relates it to creation. And I'll just say this, Yahweh created the world in 7 days. Actually, he did everything in 6 days, but the 7th day is a part of creation.
And very special.
And that creates a time piece, a week, a 7-day period that's a building block that all of creation is based on. We have cycles, and we have cycles of time. We have cycles of growing and dying. And now that we're in the phone.
And the festivals are a very important
And the
part of
festivals,
those cycles of
right.
time.
Right, the
And
seasons,
that's
the
why we need
festivals.
to know when to observe them.
He
How to
not
go about
only
that.
hallowed the 7th day, but then when the Moshe brought the Hebrews out of Egypt, brought the slaves out of Egypt, he gave them certain feasts to observe. He wants to meet with his people on certain days. And these are very special days, very special times. Our Creator wants to have special time with us. So we are invited to be in the presence of a magnificent, almighty Elohim God creator that we can't even comprehend hardly, only in our hearts. Try to put it into words or put it in your mind, and it's too big. In our heart, though, we can know him. And there's a place that he comes to dwell in us. And we have this time set aside to really rejoice with him and spend special time with our most loving creator. And it's up to us to know when to show up for this meeting, to be on the right time.
He's appointed particular times for this to happen. And it would be really, really good if we could meet him on the appropriate times.
It's a blessing for him if we can think of what Yeshua, you know, what we saw last night with Dan's presentation. Those who didn't see it, it was a wonderful presentation, and it really encapsulated for me the sacrifice our Messiah made when we reviewed the different ways that Yeshua bled, and he was covered in his blood, and he was when they were done with that body, there was hardly anything distinguishable to know that it was even a body. Yeah, Julie.
Well, it also substantiates this calendar that you're talking about, because what we just learned this year is about keeping a vigil. And it proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that Yahushua, Jesus, was keeping the Passover the day before the Jews were keeping it. They were not on the right calendar
Absolutely.
even then. So it proves the very thing that you're getting ready to teach.
Right.
We'll
Right. So
cover that a little bit more too.
yeah, we'll get into the meat of that. But the calendar is a very profound thing. So it's not just something you hang on the wall and pay attention to when you only have to. Yeah, Susie.
I was gonna say, when I was a young girl, all this has been interesting to me since I was a little girl. But I remember when it first came up, because I knew something was up every time I read through the
Susie, I
Bible.
can't-
Yeah, you might need to come
Oh,
up here so
okay.
people can hear you. Yeah.
Whenever I would read through the Bible, I would like, something didn't add up. I would see they're doing Passover here, but what's over here? What's this mean? It just was like a blur. And I think I'm thinking, something, there's an answer to this. And so this calendar thing, it fills
Filling
it,
in the gaps.
fills in the
Yes.
gaps where that is. But I can remember thinking, I don't get it.
Yeah.
This doesn't add up.
Yeah.
The scripture is scripture, but somehow, like Dan says, we have to flesh it out and study to get the hang of it.
Let's
So
dig.
this is perfect.
Well, and then, how many of us have read through the Bible and understood everything it says right away? So you kind of get used to reading passages that, well, I don't quite get it, but yeah, all right, I'll just go. I'll figure out what I can and come around to it again someday.
We should
So, yeah.
emphasize that we've got a lot of stuff to cover because this may be the only opportunity for some of you to hear this on a personal basis. And this video that we're making today will be available down the line, but
It'll be YouTube.
it'll be
On YouTube.
YouTube. But it's going to be, we need to get
Well,
all.
we
the
need to shorten
together.
things up a little bit because of our changing in
And
plans.
so if we can reduce the time spent in comments, that would be excellent.
end.
Just for today, this is not our normal weekly type thing, so.
Okay, so we'll get on with it here. So we wish we did have more time to go through everything as we've already presented on the calendar for those. Okay, over the next few hours, the best we can do will be to pull together a few reasons why this calendar displays merit and how it functions. Much of this will be review for some of you, but review can be good too. Okay, so later this afternoon, we'll look at the Passover and unleavened bread.
And for a little background on us, we were rather invested in the lunar calendar. We were actually printing calendars then because we wanted to make the perfect timing for people to get together with Yah on his holy days available. They were spelled out the best we knew on the lunar calendar, and we've since found that that's just not the right one. So we've had to make a big shift, and it was not an easy
Well,
thing
it
for
would
us
be
to do.
7 years ago. Well, it was 2016, our first Passover on this new calendar. We were trying it out. We were going to do both calendars side by side and keep double feasts during the year and seek the Holy Spirit and let us know. We knew the Holy Spirit would let us know which one was the right feast to be keeping.
And he did.
And he did. Yeah. Our first we had friends come down from Michigan for the Passover on our lunar calendar came earlier than the one here on that we figured on the Zadokai calendar. And so we're sitting there for our Passover meal on the night of the 14th going into the 15th, the beginning of unleavened bread on our lunar reckoning. And we're sitting there doing the meal, and it just struck me as clear as day. I just blurted out, "This is bogus." And everybody started laughing and said, "Bogus? I haven't heard that word in years." So, and we all kind of sat around and looked at each other and prayed about it a little bit. Yep, this isn't right. This just isn't the right Passover. We just knew it. And so they went back to Michigan. 2 weeks later, we went up to Michigan and held a Passover with them and really
On the
got
Zadokai
confirmation
date.
through on the Zadokai date. So this is our 7th Passover now on the Zadokai calendar.
So when this
But
solar calendar first came into view, and we were toying with, well, which one is right, we didn't want to accept the Zadokai because we were invested.
it's so different.
And it's different.
It's very,
And
yeah.
we just kept thinking, we're going to disprove this. We wanted to ignore the new and keep the old, but we couldn't. So we just tried to go on as we did before, like keeping both, and we felt horrible about the other. So we knew we had to come to terms with it. And we did set about to disprove it, but we were not able to do so. That's when the roof really started to cave in and prove that the Zadokai was the correct.
Yeah, when we
calendar.
show you about the Passover timing, that was one thing that just about, we thought that was the final nail where we could say, okay, this calendar is wrong.
The more we challenge the
We were wrong
biblical
about being wrong.
text, yeah, but the more we challenge the biblical text to support what we thought we knew, the more we found out that it didn't add up. And when we check the biblical text to find out about the Zadokite, the more sense it started making.
That's a strange thing. It actually fits scripture more than, I mean, there's very little in scripture about the calendar, but when
Yes.
we would check it against scripture, because that's our ultimate filter.
Exactly.
When we look at outside sources, if it doesn't match up with what it says in scripture, then it just doesn't fly. It's bogus, right? See, that word kind of catches on, doesn't it? So should we just skip ahead here?
Okay.
Okay, so first, we found what we first did, we started looking at the word Chodesh, because that's the Hebrew word that means new moon. And when it says new moon in the Bible, that word is Chodesh, or new month. It also means new month. So, but what we found it means, it's a Het, Dalet, Shin. Those are the Hebrew letters. And when you look at the etymology and break it all down, which is in our book, we won't go through all that stuff right now, but it typically means making a transition. It's the conclusion of a cycle going into the renewing or the beginning, the new cycle. So it's based on a word that means new or refreshing. Chadash is the root word. The word for moon, as you can see here, is Yareach. And then a lunar cycle is called a Yara. Those are two entirely different words that are not used when we're talking about keeping time. Now, they do mention some lunar cycles in the Bible, and they use the Hebrew word Yara. They don't use Chodesh. So it's been a matter of translation. So after scouring many papers in academia, which is fun reading, from Dead Sea Scroll researchers, we found that the moon actually had nothing to do with the liturgical, the sacred calendar that they were kept in the temple and by the ancient Hebrews. And that a change to a lunar system into, changing from this calendar into a lunar system happened after the captivity as a result of the Babylonian influence. The Babylonians were on a moon calendar, and they did by the sighting and added a 13th month when they needed to and so on. Come to find out, way, way back in ancient Egypt, they also kept the lunar calendar the same way. So it's very common in a lot of the culture to go, in the surrounding areas. The lunar calendar was pretty much the norm, of course.
Miss, can you remove the block on your notes?
Well, I can try to do that. Let's see, wherever I put it,
It's going to be in the way.
it may be a problem somewhere. I can
Yeah,
try putting it up.
There, yeah.
All right.
There we go.
Yeah, but if somebody's waiting in the lobby, you won't.
We'll hear the little noise.
The boo-boo?
Yep.
Okay. All right, we need to move on here then.
Oh, I gotta get this
Oh.
back to where. There we go. Now we'll go page down and page up. Yeah,
Okay,
you can use space bar.
all right. So a lot of the information we came across was actually found in Book of Jubilees, that the lunar observation to establish the new month could actually cause the holy days to be profane. So that's what we have here on the screens, celebrating the holy days on days that are not specified as set apart or holy. Let's see, we're running off the screen here.
Yeah, there's no
Well,
way.
it's
we can
off
get
the
it.
screen on the computer
Oh,
too.
it's on your computer.
Yeah. Observed, I think that word's supposed to be common. Yeah, yeah. On common days, in other words, if you're observing a holy day on the wrong day, which is a common day, that in the Hebrew way of thinking is profane. So in Ezekiel 22:8, we see where Yahweh is telling him that thou hast despised my holy thing and has profaned my Sabbaths. Now in the context of the passage, you think, it's talking to they're bringing bad sacrifices, they're not doing things properly and everything. But if you're doing them on the wrong days, then that's also profaning the Sabbath. They could be doing everything else just right. So in the most extreme situation, the thought came to us that there may be times when we were actually rejoicing and feasting on the true Yom Kippur. That's probably the most solemn day of the year for the Day of Atonement. And if that's on the wrong day, then we're going to be ignoring the day that we need to be really having a solemn observance and afflicting our souls praying for our atonement, which we already have, but you know, we're still working on it in many ways too. We've talked about that how we are saved in the spirit, but our souls are on a sanctification, a walk of sanctification. We're not a done project yet, folks. So
There you
we're each and every day we're learning and growing.
And falls very near Sukkot. Yom Kippur and Sukkot are 5 days away from each other. So when the calendars are orchestrated in a certain way, we could actually be feasting for Sukkot
You're supposed to be
when
back.
we're supposed to be
I-
fasting on
yeah,
Yom Kippur.
I think it was 2 years ago, the Jewish calendar had their Yom Kippur on first day of our Feast of Tabernacles. So they were keeping Yom Kippur on the day that we were feasting and as far as
Yeah.
Feast of Tabernacles. Yeah.
So it can work either direction.
Yeah.
During our days of keeping the lunar calendar, we had already experienced the turmoil of wondering how to observe Yom Kippur when it fell on a weekly Sabbath. That could be my purse.
That's your purse. Yeah. That's your phone and your purse.
Just let it go. It'll seem fun.
Yeah.
I think it would sound slightly different.
More like a Rams.
A lot different. So we had the question, do we fast or feast on Tishri 10 when it comes on a weekly Sabbath? Which do we observe? Do we fast on Tishri 9 or Tishri 11 instead so that we can keep the celebration of the Sabbath and still have our Feast of Yom Kippur separate?
Well, it seems like an annual Sabbath probably has greater priority over a weekly Sabbath. A weekly Sabbath comes every week, right? So, you know.
People
they're-
would think that, but we're learning otherwise. Do we fast on Tishri 10 and move the weekly Sabbath to Tishri 9 or 11? Do we fast on Tishri 10 and ignore the weekly Sabbath since Yom Kippur is a Sabbath day
Well,
anyway?
that's what we did one time. We did do that.
We've done that.
And Tishri is the 7th.
That's the seventh, that's the Babylonian
You're
name for
talking
the seventh month.
September.
October.
Right. Etanim, yeah, the Hebrew
Yeah,
name.
that's the
Well,
Hebrew
that's,
name.
right.
What's the Hebrew name?
Ethylene. Well,
That's
that's
for
actually,
that
I
lunar
think, a
cycle.
lunar cycle
It's-
that
that's the-
coincides with
Coincides with that month,
that month.
right?
And that's where that's coming from in our biblical texts. So, okay. Should we fast or feast?
Okay, move ahead. We already did that.
Okay. And it's interesting then that on the Chabad calendar for the year 2020, the Feast of Tammuz fell on a weekly Sabbath. So they noted on the calendar that the fast was to be observed on the 18th.
That's for this year coming up, 2022.
Right.
Yeah.
So it falls on, I should say, instead of fell on. But so they're designating that it is inappropriate to have the two together. And this isn't even.
Right, to fast on
this
a
is just
weekly
a-
Sabbath
another
is,
Fast,
yeah, this one.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So due to the unique timing in years such as 2016, when I was talking about when we first started doing this, see, 2016 was a year, there was a lot of controversy as to are we going to add the 13th month or not? The Karaite Jews, which do the sighting and they're kind of the official bunch that checks the barley to see if it's a beeb. And they have, certain fields in Israel get more sun. So the barley starts to ripen a little earlier than other fields. And the Karaites have certain places that they check. And then other people were sending their own people over to check on the barley. So there was a lot of controversy going on that year. And some people are going to add the 13th month and some people weren't. The Hillel calendar had already calculated that they were going to add.
And
the
why would
13th.
they add a 13th month?
So
What's the
There-
purpose?
that's-
right, so because by going by the lunar cycles, you end up 10 days short every year. And after a couple of years, it adds up to where you're almost the end of your year, beginning your new year is a month before you did it 3 years ago. So they have to add another month so the seasons don't get out of whack. So anyway, if the month is not added, then the barley may not be ripe enough to wave. Okay, it might not be a beeb. It has to be at a certain stage of ripeness. And if the month is added, this is the conundrum in 2016. The barley was going to be way too ripe. They're not supposed to start harvesting until it's waved. The new crop isn't so if you're waiting for the waving and you have to add the month and it's 2 weeks past prime before you can harvest,
Yeah.
you got a problem. So a month is a big period of time to be adjusting your year by.
Well, it's
So
12th of the year.
that's a 12th of the year, right?
A lot.
So how can this be in Yahweh's perfect plan? Was that really his perfect plan? So as we continued to work through this process, that was not the only question we would ask, okay? Several questions began to come to mind, and we knew we needed to answer them before we could get the whole picture. Now, we just handed out a sheet of paper that's got a bunch of questions on there.
We'll
We got-
send it out online.
And we'll send it out online, sure.
Yeah.
Yep. And here's some highlights of questions. I mean, these are questions when you start trying to keep the calendar, they're just going to be regular, they come along if you're trying to do it according to the normal method. Is enough barley going to be at the proper stage of ripening to start the new year? And will it be a bean? Okay, do we add the 13th month or a second Adar? Have you ever heard of a second Adar? That's the name for the 13th month this year. If the month is not added, the barley may not be ripe enough to wave, or if the month is added, it may be overripe. Okay, we just covered it. Whose authority? Okay, that was a problem in 2016 because everybody thought, okay, we're going to go by this authority. No, we're going to go by that authority. We're going to go by our own authority. We're going to be, Yahweh's speaking to me. I'm going to go by his authority on this and so on. And
Yeah, I get that a lot. Well, this is what we feel he's telling us.
this is what, right.
Yeah.
So everybody ends up on these different calendars. And then if you're going by the conjunction of the new moon or the sighting of the new moon, the month may start a day or two early for some and others. We used to fellowship with people that everybody was like, well, when are you having the feast? Oh, we're going to be starting on Thursday. Oh, okay. We're starting on Wednesday because we start our month a day earlier than you did. So, it became very commonplace, and maybe some of you have run into this. Several more questions come to mind, such as, now this is, you really think about it. Does the Bible ever mention a 13th month?
No.
If it happens every 3 years, it happened, there's going to be a second Adar this year on the Jewish calendar. It happened 2 years ago. So it happens usually every 3 years, every now and then. It has to happen in a 2-year span.
I think it's 8 times
So-
over 19 years. It's a lot.
Something like that.
Yeah, now there's a 19-year cycle of the moon and the sun to synchronize with each other. And during that 19-year cycle, it's going to be a large percentage of the time that you have to add the 13th month, probably about 30 some percent
Not
of the
good.
time. So it's not like it's an uncommon thing. It's a very common kind of thing. And yet we don't hear of a 13th month. So then does the month start with a new moon or the dark or crescent, or why? This is the question I always got. Why does there have to be so much confusion and controversy? Why can't we just get this thing figured out? Does everything have to cause conflict? Really, is that how Yahweh runs things?
Okay, we want to go next into saying that we kept coming back through the process and realizing that Yah was not the author of confusion. So we find that in 1 Corinthians 14:33. If he really meant for us to understand how to meet him properly at these appointed times, surely he would have put a method in place that was not so confusing. Are we really supposed to be guesstimating as to when to start our month or the new year on the calendar? If God thinks enough of humans to set aside specific days to meet with us, it must be very important for us to know what the correct timing is to determine the proper dates to meet with him. The more we studied this calendar, we saw that indeed he has given us a very simplistic model to follow that never ceases to amaze us as we work with this calendar. The questions we had pondered about how 1/12 of the year seemed to be too much variance was answered by this calendar. There was never more than a 1-week variance from one year to the next. with the solar system. And that was just the first unique beneficial feature.
Okay, I guess I must have bumped it or something. I have-
Okay,
But anyway,
so
here's,
that's where we are now.
this shows a schema of the whole year. So with this calendar, there is no more guesswork. It's a very simple, basic, stays in sync with the seasons and the years and everything. You could know when the holy days will fall. They fall on the same days every year. I mean, it's amazing right there. At first, I thought that was kind of hokey because it seemed too simple. It seemed like, what, some kid make this up or something? But he made it so it would be simple for so
So a kid could.
so a kid could follow. Yeah, it's like we have to be as children to enter the kingdom, right?
You're not talking the same day on the Gregorian calendar, are you?
No, on the Gregorian calendar, right? You can see here by the days of the week, where the highlights are, those are the holy days and special other Zadokite special observances that fall on these same days of the week. It's based on weeks of creation. Yeah. So you can plan your life around it. You don't have to wait to see when the moon is sighted to know exactly when to celebrate your feast and everything. You can make plans ahead of time without a lot of guesswork. Knowing in advance will allow folks to be ready to observe them when they come. Actually, after the program, we have an appendix in the book, and if anybody's got the book, there was tons of appendixes in the back of the book to show you how you can keep track of your own calendar. You don't have to keep
You
buying
make
calendar. I
your
mean,
own.
you can make your own. Yeah,
We like
Um,
supporting you.
yeah, we enjoy that too. That's a
But there may be a day when
There'd be
we
a time
can't
when
do
we
it
can't
that
do it,
way,
right.
and you would have the information in hand
And-
that you need for both the Gregorian and the Zadokite and how they would merge. All the schemas are there and templates are there.
Yeah, you can go by a schema like this and just write in the Gregorian dates, for
Uh-huh.
what those days are, and know how to look at them. Amazingly, the holy days on this calendar even come on the exact day of okay, we got that. Yeah, Sukkot always starts on a Wednesday. Passover is always going to be on a Tuesday, coming into Tuesday night. Wednesday starts the Feast of Unleavened Bread every year. So no annual Sabbath ever conflicts with a weekly Sabbath. The weekly Sabbaths are just as much of a feast day as the annual Sabbaths.
Unfortunately,
flow of
that's
this
what the LL calendar does. You have sometimes they eat up on the same day.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
I
do.
never got that. No, that's why they were, how do you do that?
It should not
So,
be.
And when I share with people in that calendar, they're going to answer that. Like,
Just how it is,
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of how we lived with it. We just thought, well, it's a weekly Sabbath. That's not as big a deal as the annual Sabbath. So,
no.
but it's spelled
Yeah, it
out very
is.
clearly that it's, when he talks about his feast days, that's the first one he names is the weekly Sabbath.
Right,
Yeah.
That's
it was
It's just right-
23.
Day, seventh day of creation, that's more important.
It's a
Mhm.
it's a
What's that?
Leviticus 23,
23,
it's at the first
yeah.
of the chapter. I'm
very
not
beginning of,
sure.
yeah,
Okay.
and 1 through
Yeah.
4, I think, or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that.
Okay, so moving on here.
Okay, we're gonna be looking at Genesis 1:14 here, which tells us that our Creator fashioned the heavens to provide us with the mechanics for timekeeping. It is specific, but not only in what it says, but also in what it does not say. And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days and years." The Hebrew word for sign is oath,
Right.
and it means signal. They would provide signs or signals to tell us how to determine our seasons, our days, and our years. Because these lights were put in the heavenly display for us on day 4. The Zadokite calendar always begins on weekday 4, which is Wednesday, every year. And you realign to the day when observable time began when you start your new year. So you always start the year on a Wednesday.
On Wednesday
Yeah, if I go back,
after the spring equinox.
Let me
Yeah.
go back to our schema here. I'm going the wrong way.
I think we're gonna cover that
Yeah.
a little later, but it is always on a
Yeah.
Wednesday.
So you can see here on the first month, that first day is always on a Wednesday. It's in a green block.
You can use, I think your arrow. keeping
Oh,
it
yeah,
as a
okay,
pointer.
yeah, the arrow, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so here's the first month, first day. It's going to be on that Wednesday every year.
Okay. The sun rules the day or the light portion of any 24-hour period. And conversely, the moon rules the night or the dark portion of the same 24-hour period. The moon is a witness to the sun.
Divides the day from the night.
Yep. And it is important to realize that both weeks and months are noticeably absent in our Genesis 1:14 verse. The celestial signs Yah provided were never meant to mark the week or the monthly cycle. Just as the week is a 7-day count, then the next one begins. Our months are to be counted as well. This calendar has 12 30-day months, making 360 days. We will soon explain that the extra 4 days are a part of the year that brings it to the 364-day year.
Yeah, so for right
Likewise-
now, just understand 30-day months are in this calendar.
Every month.
Every month
Every
is 30
month is
days.
30 days. Likewise, the stars move in a fashion that correlate with these 30-day counts. Father's Maserat not only provides a celestial imagery that confirms the months, but it actually relates the story of the ages as well.
I think we're out of sync here somewhere. I've got the, okay, I've got the,
Well,
can you scroll down there and see where we're at? Okay, we're coming up to this. All right.
okay.
All right, so our Bible tells us that Yah appointed the ordinances of heaven and earth stretched out, and he stretched out the heavens by his discretion here in Jeremiah 33:25, appointed the ordinances of heaven and earth. And there back in Jeremiah 10, how he hath stretched out the heavens by his discretion. The Hebrew word translated seasons in Genesis 1:14 is moed. So it is often taught that this means the feast days. Their feast days are called moedim, based on this word moed, moedim being a plural. So its meaning is much broader than that, and it can simply mean seasons or feasts
Divine
or
appointment.
divine appointments. Right? It's about an appointed time for something to happen. So in Leviticus 23:4, where we see that's the main. There's other places, of course, in Torah, but this is where the main directions are given to keep the feasts. And so he says, these are the feasts, the moed of Yahweh. Even holy convocations should claim in their seasons, the moedim. So for feasts and seasons, it's a form of the same Hebrew word.
I would like to interject that the seasons are appointed times. So it's not just your feast. You don't have to think automatically feasts when you see that word, because there are other appointed times, and those seasons are appointed times for agricultural purposes and for the calendar year. So
Well, and these feasts are all agriculturally based,
right.
so they have to be in their season.
Or spring and fall primarily what you said.
Right. Your spring feasts need to be in the spring,
Right,
which
exactly.
no matter if you add the 13th, well, if you don't add the 13th month, your spring feasts would start moving into the winter, but they make sure the spring feasts are always in the spring. But last year is an example of how the fall feasts on the Jewish calendar started the 2 days before the fall equinox. So it was still technically summer when the fall feast started.
I
It
think
was early last year on their calendar.
you're ready for this.
Okay, so yeah, next we come up to the Encyclopedia Britannica. He gives us a marker in the sky called the equinox. Now, it's another sign that we need to understand here. It talks about where the ecliptic and the celestial equator intersect. And then in the International Encyclopedia of Astronomy, it talks about an equatorial circle that is equidistant from the poles. Okay, if you picture the globe, and it touches the horizon due east and west. So when the sun is coming from the east going to the west, there's an equidistant place on the horizon that comes at the equinox. As it goes towards the summer, the sun gets higher in the sky and moves on the horizon. And then in the wintertime, it goes past that midpoint and gets lower. But every 6 months or so, there's an equinox.
And our seasons are based on the difference of the light, the amount of light and heat. And that's why our agricultural is
Right.
dependent upon.
Well, we
so
learned in school about the sun or the earth being on a tilt and revolving around the sun. That's what creates our seasons.
A quick question throw in there, but how
Yeah.
do people live in the southern hemisphere look at the feast because they're completely opposite.
I have,
Yeah.
that's,
a good question.
it's an opposite. Yeah, I have no answer to that either because I've been in the southern hemisphere and it's a weird feeling because no matter where you are here on a sunny day,
Like Australia believers.
your sun is gonna, if you're facing the direction that the sun came up,
Mhm.
Right.
during the middle of the day, you're gonna feel the sun on your right shoulder more than you do on your left because we're in the northern hemisphere. So the sun is always a little bit south. It's even in the middle of the summer, it's still just a little south. I went to Peru and on a bright sunny day down there, I would look where the sun came up and I felt the sun on my left shoulder. That was bizarre. I thought,
Like Guam, about 500
This
miles
is-
from the equator, it like was coming straight down.
yeah, if you were near the equator, right, yeah, it would be right on top of it.
It's supposed to be in Jerusalem.
Strange.
Right,
The
this was
feasts are
designed.
supposed to be in Jerusalem.
So,
This
yeah,
was designed
That-
for
Yeah, that's it.
Jerusalem.
It was-
so if you're in the southern hemisphere, yeah, you're just
Based
gonna
on
be,
that,
Next
You
year.
just gotta adapt.
you gotta go by Jerusalem time.
Where is
Yeah,
your
and I,
scrip- Where is your scriptural reference for the equinox in the scripture, please?
We're gonna get to that.
we-
We haven't, it's in our notes here. We'll get to it. And if
I'd like
we,
to get it, please.
it's
Okay,
not,
if-
there's no direct thing there, but you won't
we
see it.
we can see how it all works though,
Right.
with the scriptures.
When you
that
put
are
it
there.
together with the sun, with the movement of the sun, moon and stars, okay, here, this diagram here is showing how the ecliptic of the earth going around the sun crosses this celestial equator. And this is, pretty advanced astronomy but believe it or not, the Babylonians, people knew in ancient times, they understood these movements. And they had a better concept of what's going on in the sky over their head than we do now.
Okay, now here's our notes coming right up. It's Psalms 19:4-5 that gives us a general idea of how this works. And it says the line goes out through all the earth. That would be what Bill's just talking about.
Right.
And
Just
their
with-
words to the end of the world. In them hath he set a tabernacle for the sun, which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and rejoiceth as a strong man to run a race. So this equatorial line to go out through all the earth is the sign that it's time for the new year or the race of this passage to begin. The sun provides the pivotal equinoctial sign when it comes out of its chamber during Kodesh and enters into the heavenly constellation of Aries. This signals that it is time to begin the race of the new yearly cycle of the Mazzaroth as the sun migrates through our sky during the year. And here we go. The arrival of the equinox coupled with the confirmation of the sign of the sun entering into the stellar constellation of Aries is a double witness of sorts that the new year is to begin. Genesis 1:14 again is here for your reference. And just as the vernal spring equinox dictates the timing to begin the new year.
Okay, I'm behind on a couple.
Oh, yeah, we got to get this.
No, that's not.
Maybe we didn't make a slide for that. Okay, there it is.
There it is, yeah.
Okay, just as the vernal equinox dictates the timing to begin the new year, it is also the entrance of the spring season. Likewise, the solstices and autumnal fall equinox are determined by the sun to dictate the transitions for the other three seasons. All of the seasons are dictated by the signs of the sun. It is a line that it's the demarcation for the seasonal divide, and it enters into the 4 constellations that divide the Mazzaroth seasons. This provides a double witness that the change is indeed occurring. And we actually have brought with us an ephemeris. I'd be glad to show it to you later if you'd like to see it, which dictates how this works in the heavens.
Okay, here we go. There's back to Psalms 19 here.
Yeah. His going forth is from the ends of the heaven, and his circuits to the ends of it.
And you
To
can
the
see the
ends of
circuit
it.
there.
So there's your circuits. There is nothing hid from the heat thereof. The law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul, and the
Converting the soul.
testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple.
Now, when we look at all this overhead, do we not know there's a testimony of our Creator staring at us in the face?
Yeah.
If I was
I
smart
think
enough to grasp everything.
Maybe, no, I'd like to get our, let me get our, we've got a diagram. I'm going to try to bring it over here so people online can see it.
It takes a minute.
And talked, okay. How does this work? Well, we don't know it. Okay.
Dan's not in here.
He's not in here.
Hold it.
Well, I can hold it okay. I'm just wondering if people online are seeing it okay. But this shows a circuit of the year. How about, well, the screen in the way for, can you see the diagram here? Here's the spring equinox right here.
They need to have.
Okay, and then 3 months of 30 days.
Is this going to show up online?
As long as it's on this camera here. I can
Yeah.
see it. Yeah.
And they see that okay?
Probably so.
We can see it okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That's good. All right. 3 months of 30 days. And then there's a day called Tekufah. That's a tav. That's a Hebrew tav for Tekufah. That's a day of transition. It's not a part of a month. There are 30-day months. And then there's a day, a so-called day out of time in a manner, but it's very much a part of the year. It's a very important day. It's a marker between the seasons. This is when your equinox, then the summer solstice, 3 more months, another equinox, the autumnal equinox. This is coming in towards the winter solstice and 3 more months. So it's a very simple, basic calendar. We have 3 months of 30 days, 90 days, plus 1 day to divide the seasons, and then the next 3 months. And it goes around and around every year, winter, summer, autumn, spring. And when Psalm 19 talks about the sun coming out of its tabernacle, you notice from the spring equinox, when the year begins, this is when we're coming into the time of year when the daylight is longer than the night. When the autumnal equinox happens, then this part of the year, it goes back into its tabernacle, so to speak. It goes into a period of time where nighttime is longer than daytime. So there's a difference of night and day in a global kind of sense here. And the calendar just goes totally in sync with all of what Yahweh created here.
Mhm.
That's how simple it is. And basic. It's kind of like it goes along with the way he made things.
Ah,
All right, where are we at here? I'm tangled up in a cord. There we go.
Be careful with those forks because it'll knock everything out.
It'll knock everybody off.
Okay.
Maybe the
Well, we
smaller
need to-
picture
there.
down
All right.
side.
All right, so in a fabulous article entitled Enoch, son of Jared, and the solar calendar of the priesthood in Qumran by Rachel Elior, a very outspoken Hebrew scholar. She's got accolades and credentials that are a mile long. And she is expressing the divine origin of the calendar in this article in the most eloquent terms. We can only begin to imagine the inspiration that she has received to put these words together.
Jewish.
Here's-
She's going up against the grain.
Oh, she's very Jewish, and she's, yeah, well, this calendar, see, the thing is, this calendar exists, and a lot of people wish it didn't.
And she's at Hebrew University.
She's a, yeah, Hebrew, yeah. Haifa, in Haifa. Yeah, she's a big wig at the, main scholar at Haifa. So here she says, time is not an arbitrary man-made structure, okay? Time goes right hand in hand with creation. So it's not a man-made structure or human order dependent on unstable observations and determinations influenced by external conditions, adjustments, and errors. So she is directly addressing the Hillel method of calculating their calendar. She says, rather, time is of divine origin, and that's what we've come to learn here ourselves. A cosmic pattern obeying preordained immutable laws, a cycle that has been repeating since sacred time was imprinted on nature during the 7 days of creation and consecrated through the Sabbath day. So this is consecrating on Sabbath day for all of creation every week. Time was envisaged as the reflection of divine order in the universe. Yahweh is bringing order to chaos, so designed as to perpetuate the cycle of life, blessing and fertility. And we see that in the spring of, we get to witness this every year. An order in which time and space are sanctified and interdependent from the earliest stages of creation, which took place in time, divided into 7 days, and in the space formed during those 7 days. Anybody with a knowledge of physics knows that there's a space-time continuum, that you don't have space, you don't have stuff without having motion, without having time. That's what time is a motion of the stuff that Yahweh created.
Great.
So to be succinct, the calendar we have come to know and revere here, it exists in the DSS, that's the Dead Sea Scrolls. That's a shortened common way of expressing Dead Sea Scrolls because it's a lot of work and effort to say Dead Sea Scrolls all the time. So in the DSS, it exists and it is ancient. It is an archaeological treasure. It is well documented, and that's the part that is difficult for a lot of traditional people to accept, is that it's well documented. It's very simple, and it is very different, and it is very real. So it just is what it is, and we just present the information. You're free to make up your mind, do your own research. We're not going to try to change anybody and force people to get on this calendar. We're just saying this is what we see, and we see that it fits scripture, and we believe this is the calendar to go with. Of course, I think everybody else does here because they're here. They're
Or
not
at
doing,
least wanting to openly look
wanting
at
to
it.
take a look
Yeah.
at it. Yeah,
The biggest thing.
right. And we're not trying to sell it. We're just saying, wow, it's like when you first discover Sabbath and you want to go tell all your friends saying, we're supposed to be doing this on Saturday, not Sunday. And they go, huh? What are you, Jewish now? What are you, crazy?
You lay it out like you're doing, it speaks for itself.
That's
It
right.
does.
Like it comes all over, like, wow.
That's what.
It's just is what it is. Yeah. I mean, we're not making this up. It's there. And it's just, here it is, like it or lump it. It's it. So quoting again from Rachel Elior's article, she says the calendar was not entrusted to man, subject to adjustment and change, or dependent upon human calculations or terrestrial considerations, such as observing the
That's what
moon from
Hillel
the.
calendar did, my understanding. They make adjustments.
Right.
Yeah, they make adjustments on the Hillel. They have a formal method
Postponement.
of making postponements when they need
Adding a
to.
13th.
Or the terrestrial consider. We used to follow Nehemiah Gordon and the Karaites, and when they officially sighted the moon in Jerusalem, that's when we knew to begin the month. And after a while of doing that, Karen and I were kind of looking at each other, when it's cloudy out and they can't see the moon, they start the month anyway after 2 days.
Yeah.
So that means the moon, they knew the moon was there.
I've asked that
So-
question before too.
So we started using the conjunction. Astronomically speaking, when the moon is dark, we know that the moon is new. When you see it, it's already been birthed. It's not new now.
It's kind of like, if a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it, is there sound? Well, of course there is. The sound waves go out, the animals hear it, there's sound, whether we hear it or not. It's the same thing with the moon in the sky. It's there
Whether
whether
you
we
see it or not. It's, yeah.
And that just kind of made me go, whoa.
So anyway, she points beyond, okay, so is represented the concept of a profound, comprehensive reality, a divine reality. See, this is the reality that exists that we have a hard time seeing, and we can't see it, touch it, feel it, hear it, but it's there. It's all around us all the time. This divine reality beyond the reach of the senses.
Yeah, it's like when you, if it's going by the sighting of the moon, then who's really deciding when the month starts? Man is deciding.
It's very much some man somewhere, and that man has to eat, sleep, and get dressed in the morning just like the rest of us. I mean, a man is a human. Just yeah. But this divine reality is being reflected to us in the cyclic numerical harmony. I mean, her wording here is just amazing because there's a harmony revealed in the passage. Missing an eye there. In the passage and changes of time. The passage, it's kind of getting an idea of the profound nature of time itself, right? And this calendar just embraces that. It's based on a cycle of Sabbaths and seasons, embodying the eternity of the primeval order, based on the eternal cycle of the sun and the cyclic motion of the celestial bodies, which could be precisely predicted by the numerical calculation. Any infringement of this sacred cyclic pattern, as expressed by the fixed numerical proportions of its component parts, okay, component parts that we got shown you there on the diagram. Any attempt to ignore the divine pattern based on number and counting would generate impurity, bringing in its wake curse, death, and oblivion. Well, she has a clear idea of the clean and the unclean, the pure and the impure. That's the Jewish background is a big, big deal of being clean or unclean. And when you're unclean or when something is impure, they recognize this brings on the cursing that Moshe talked about to the people.
And we look at the conditions of the world today and how the weather cycles are changing. And it's like maybe Father's trying to reach out and shake us a little bit and say, take a look at this, because there's an effect from not doing this that plays out in nature itself. Yes.
Prophet Habakkuk, Haggai, excuse me, said in chapter 1, once more, I will shake the earth.
Yes. Habakkuk.
So prophecy of what we're experiencing right now.
Right.
So yeah, our Father.
I mean, look at the rain we had yesterday.
Yeah.
We're having winds and rains unprecedented all over the place these days.
Well, it's all part of judgment.
And shakings too.
But one thing though, it's amazing with all the craziness and that's how things are getting turned upside down. Yahweh is still proving his presence to us because the sun comes up every day and it sets every day. We still have the cycles of time, regardless of what's happening. The trees are still blossoming. Azalea bushes around here are beautiful. There's only a certain time of year when an azalea bush just pops out and says, hey, here I am. And it's like, wow, look at that bush. I mean, that's Yahweh saying, I'm still here.
Well,
like that sign that we saw yesterday across the driveway from the flooded lawn that we were looking at, saying, God's got this. Yeah, God's got this. He does, no matter what's going on.
And not only the sun, because it rises and it sets, but then the moon reflects its light even when the sun is down. So it's like, I'm still here.
That's
here.
That's the purpose. The
And
moon is a
the sun
witness to the sun.
Witness to the sun.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I need to click ahead here.
You're right here. So.
Okay, I went down through all that about the quote.
Okay.
Yeah, we need to move along
Okay.
here, I think. Okay, going on more with it. Okay, it reflects a preordained cycle, preserving the unique sanctity of the Sabbath. Okay, we'll just hit some of the highlights here. Its pattern. It links heaven and earth. Oh yeah, linking heaven and earth. I mean, can you imagine that being embedded in a calendar? Really? Yeah. It's preordained since the beginning of creation. That's like I say, this calendar just embraces it. It's like a big hug around creation. And so every day is a step through our life here in creation. Any violation of the sequence of properly dated Sabbaths in each season or of any other aspect of regularity, it's a breach of cosmic order. Uh-oh, now it's really getting serious. A breach of cosmic order and divine law, a desecration of the oaths and covenants concluded between heaven and earth. So that's the importance of the calendar. We're talking about oaths between heaven and earth, covenant that God made with us on earth. This is all a part of keeping the right calendar.
That's been polluted by man.
Yeah, violation of this all-embracing fixed ritual order would be punished by parallel divinely wrought disturbance of nature. You mean like you were just talking about bringing doom and destruction? Doom and destruction, yes, and you know
It's not greenhouse gas.
yeah. Well, these are beginning to be, I mean, I know for myself, this is stuff that to me would be something I saw in a movie at one time, maybe.
This is just her writings, right?
But-
Rachel?
Yeah.
This is Rachel Ellior's writing, yeah.
It's not referencing a book, but.
Well, it's in an article
articles
about-
that she wrote.
Yeah.
Are these scriptures from?
No,
No.
these are not from Enoch, no.
This is
These are-
her own thoughts
Okay.
that she's put forth in an article, and she's
She's
just
not a
divinely
believer, but she
inspired.
came to realize the truth of this calendar.
Right.
Right.
And believe me, the Jews in Israel, a lot of them do not like her.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of them that do, but don't say so. When they're in America, they'll say, she's really onto something.
There's a lot of Jewish believers in Israel as One for Israel Ministries has got
Right.
over 32,000 believers, Jewish believers in Israel. But some of them don't let the people know because of family persecution.
Right.
Sure. Sure.
She commands respect.
She does.
Right.
All the other scholars they can't debate her on
Right.
this.
No, they
They
can't
know they
debate her
can't. They aren't gonna win.
because it's,
Yeah.
the Dead Sea Scrolls were put there at the time they were and revealed to us at the time they were for this time.
Such a time.
Such a time as
That's
this.
it.
So Yah doesn't specify that you're okay. Just
Okay.
leave it there. Doesn't specify that the moon or any of its phases in any way determine the beginning of the holy day or even the start of the month from which we count to get to the holy days. This system of counting is consistent with counting even the days of the month according to Yah's patterning in order to coordinate and synchronize with his creation. And we want to move on to Ratzon and Ben Dov. They
Eshbal Ratzon and Jonathan
And
Ben
Jonathan,
Dov.
yes.
Those are two other scholars in Haifa.
she was with the Department of Bible Studies at the University of Haifa, and her superior is Professor Jonathan Ben Dov, who's the head of the Haifa Project for Research on the Dead Sea Scrolls. And they deciphered a scroll. Its number is 4, which means it was found in the 4th cave, and the Q is for Qumran. And the number of the scroll is 324D. So that's what the scroll name is, 4Q324D. And this is a newly found one that was very, very intricate, and it had encoding within it, and it was very difficult to decipher. So it took a long time, and it was one of the last ones they worked with because it was so intricate. And we described that process a bit more in our book. We won't go into it now. But in this article that they wrote about their work, she says the lunar calendar, which Judaism follows to this day, requires a large number of human decisions. People must look at the stars and moon and report on their observations, and someone must be empowered, there's that authority factor, to decide on the new month and the application of leap years. By contrast, the 364-day calendar was perfect because this number can be divided into 4 and 7 special occasions, always fall on the same day. This avoids the need to decide, for example, what happens when a particular occasion falls on the Sabbath, as we've talked about. And this calendar is unchanging. It appears to have embodied the beliefs of the members of the community regarding perfection and holiness.
Yeah, it would be regarding the Essenes. They were on a quest to be as pure as they possibly could because they did not want to take a chance of being exiled again. They just gotten back
Right.
from the Babylonian captivity and they didn't want to mess everything up again.
Now,
when they
what you
came
just
back in
read,
the
that's
land.
your words, that's your writing.
No,
No, this
from-
is Eshbal
That's still
Ratzon
from
and
Rachel.
Ben Dole.
Wow, yeah, that's so clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are the two scholars that deciphered the last scroll, 324D.
Yeah,
It's not
that's
Rachel.
their article.
This is not Rachel Ellie or?
No,
No.
This is the other one.
this is Eshbal Ratzon.
Okay.
That's a lady.
Jonathan
And
Doe.
actually, she is a very friendly scholar too. Karen emailed her a couple of times and she replied. I mean, she didn't say, well, who are you?
No,
but-
she's not.
No, she's pretty well insulated. I think she's protects herself.
Yeah.
But she knows she could be
Well,
a target.
that's a good paragraph there. That really is.
Yeah, I want to apologize. Some of our formatting is a little different because I'm running on, we
Yeah.
loaded my slides on Dan's computer and the programs are a little different. So
Yeah.
things aren't lining up
Couple-
quite
couple
right,
times.
some of the slides.
Rachel.
Eshbal.
Eshbal. Eshbal, I think.
Never heard that before. Eshbal.
Ishmael, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was a man until it Ratzon. Yeah,
The
Ratson.
rats are on.
Rats are on.
Ratzon, yeah.
That's peculiar.
But we have all about this in our book as well.
Oh, somebody's running in.
They don't get it. Which one?
Let's see, somebody.
The calendar book, the
Okay.
biblical calendar that I know.
That's, who's that right there? It's Teresa Holman.
Teresa, okay.
Okay, good.
Welcome, Teresa.
Barbara's on there.
Yeah, good. Okay. Well, just leave that there right now.
Okay.
Okay.
So, okay. All right. We know that the seventh day was hallowed by Yah and proclaimed as a Sabbath, but is not the only Sabbath. There are annual Sabbaths as well. Here we are in Leviticus 23. At the beginning, here's right where where we were talking, Renee. Yeah, where beginning of chapter 23 in Leviticus, he says, "These are my feasts," and the very first one, the seventh day, is the Sabbath of rest.
They're not the feast of the Jews.
It's a feast, yeah,
They're-
right.
They're for his people.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, these are the feasts of Yahweh. It is obvious here that the count to I'm going to have to move the.
Yeah, let's see.
They don't get it.
Well, if you don't get it just with the arrow on there, see, sometimes it's a hand and sometimes there, if it's an arrow, then you can move it. There we go.
Okay, all right. So anyway, it is obvious here that the count of the seventh day is considered as being holy in the same respect that the annual Sabbaths are that we've already talked about. So now it's not.
Okay,
moving.
once I move that thing,
Yeah.
then you gotta get this back.
Oh.
Where there we go.
Okay. You want to go
There you go.
Yeah.
Go back.
each of these weekly
Okay,
Sabbaths, right? Yep. So each of these weekly Sabbaths is a feast day to Yah in its own right. Just as much as an annual feast is. Okay, and here we have from the Book of Jubilees. Now, the Book of Jubilees, okay, it's extra biblical. Some churches actually is still part of canon. In the
It's
Ethiopic
the
church,
oldest
the
canon
oldest,
in the history of the world includes Jubilees and Enoch. And the Jews made sure it was erased from the
Right.
canons that
they
we
didn't
have.
want to canonize this book for obvious reasons. Because it has, it has this information about the calendar.
Actually, no, it's,
No,
but there's
you can't see
information
it, but
about
the
it.
information about it.
Yeah,
There's a lot of references in Jubilees to the calendar.
but Rachel
This
Ellie
calendar.
Orr actually says that the canon was scrubbed of any reference to the 364.
That's why you don't,
year.
if you look in if you try to just go by the Bible and figure out the calendar, you can't even figure out what we're doing, what the rabbis say we're supposed to be doing. I mean,
Because
that's,
they changed
Because they
words.
had to take so
They-
much out
yeah.
to keep from
tried
emphasizing
to
this
hide it.
calendar.
so it's a dangerous path to go down. We won't go down there too far though. You know, it gets, you know, when you start talking about
That's
how
what we discovered.
we
They
find
do.
that there are ancient documents that have been found in Qumran that were what they called part of scripture.
But
They were scripture.
They deleted them out.
she emphasizes that they didn't delete anything that they thought was of merit. It's just little tiny references here and there that would point to this calendar.
Right,
Wow.
right.
Have a-
We wanted to scrub the
We
calendar.
have a text somewhere that, of a biblical text that still has those.
I wish there was, and there may be, because
I'm
some
sure
of these
there
things
is.
are still hidden away.
Yeah, I
There
wonder
may
what
be.
else they're gonna find yet in the desert there. But this is, you know, what we do have is what we're presenting. That's what we do know. We can't say we know for sure everything. And if new evidence, and that's, okay, let's stop right here.
Yeah.
Because we want to go by the evidence. We don't want to go by preconceived personal ideas, wishes, emotions,
That's right.
attachments, all that kind of stuff. I mean, we came out of the church, right? We came into this messianic movement. So we're already going against the grain.
Yeah.
But now in the messianic movement, it's messy. It's really messy. And we added to it. I mean, we talked to a couple of scholars, a couple of the main movers and shakers about this calendar. And we ran into a lot of stone walls because people
Oh, yeah.
don't want to look at it.
They do not.
They do not want to look at it. And we were warned, if you're going to go into this, make sure you know what you're doing. And it was personally said, who do you think you are? This woman was very much a scholar. We're not. We're Bill and Karen. That's it. And Karen's got a college degree. I don't. I don't even. I went to one semester of college and partied my way into flunking and everything. And my father didn't want to pay for any more of that, so I went to work. But
Can I make one
The
statement?
Holy Spirit
A
teaches.
lot of these other groups that refuse to look at this calendar, they continue to say that Judah has the scepter. Well, what I want to say is, who is the king of Judah? It is the Messiah. The Messiah has the scepter.
Amen.
amen.
And also with that, the original ones who took it from Aaron and their grandsons took it on down and had to start them because it's celebrated. Josiah did, 2 Chronicles 34. They're from the tribe of Judah also.
Yeah.
They're from the tribe
Right.
of Judah. It always been the
Tribe of Judah, yeah, all the
So
way
there's
down,
a
right.
against
And
that,
that's-
and I bring that up when to maybe two people in that mindset of, and they had nothing to come back
They
because
can't. They can't.
because it's still we're.
But I
still
just
talking
wanna
about the
say,
same tribe.
It's rebellion. It's the same thing the church has done. They don't want to look at truth. And it says that the way back is going to be hard to find, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Well, this was a passage here in Jubilees that really got our attention. It says, because if you're observing the moon, basically, they will disturb its time from days and from its feasts. For everything will fall out in them according to their testimony. They will not leave out any day or disturb any feasts. Uh-oh, I just went. Okay, let's get back there.
And it says that they will be 10 days off most years.
Right,
And that's
there's,
what
there's a
they
lot
are.
more there about talking about the effect of the moon, going by the moon, how it just disrupts the year and you end up with your feasts on the wrong days. We don't need to keep hammering away on that too much. So that also something that's been found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, it's the Temple Scroll, which is one of the primary scrolls where a lot of this is laid out. See, that's another thing. The calendar isn't all in one scroll either. It's here, there,
That's
and
right.
around. Yeah, but the Temple Scroll has a lot of information regarding it. And they also specified for them that the first day of the first month is another annual Sabbath. Now, that wasn't given to Moses in the Torah, as far as we know, but they apparently there. So on the Zadokite calendar, we show it as a possible Sabbath. Make up your own mind if you want to observe it or not observe it. It's
Who initiated again, Bill? Who initiated that train of thought?
Temple.
Well, it's in the temple scroll, and it's what's called the temple scroll. I don't know the number of it right offhand, which
We
one is
can
it,
find it later.
but it's,
This is minor point, yeah.
yeah, they saw that. So it's kind of a counterbalance, you know, in the beginning of the 7th month, we have the Feast of Trumpets at the autumnal equinox. So in the spring equinox, they just saw the beginning of months, the first day of the new, you know, like New Year's Day, you know, as another holy day.
Yeah, it's a correlation like a bookend
Yeah.
in the patterning of God in the celestial realm. So we feel like there is merit to the potential that it kind of should be observed as
As far as we know, Torah, we're
Wow.
not commanded to keep it in Torah, but
right.
no harm
We
in
do.
keeping it. So we do.
Okay, the patterning on the Zedekiah calendar moves from day to week to month to season to year to Shemitah to Jubilee. Now, your Shemitah are 7-year cycles, and the Jubilee is a 49-year cycle, with the 50th year being the first year of the next cycle as well. The year of Jubilee. We find that in Exodus, we didn't put it on here, but it's in Exodus 25. Or not, I mean,
Leviticus,
Leviticus
yeah.
25. I don't
Yeah.
know why I said Exodus.
Leviticus, right?
Yeah. The number of days in the year must always be divisible by 7. This patterning is never to be compromised in the least. All weeks on this calendar are complete weeks.
Complete weeks.
So there's never a Sabbath left dangling due to an incomplete week. Each calendar has at least 52 Sabbaths and complete weeks. Each Sabbath and each feast hold firmly within the week from one year to the next. The sacred 7 principle is what we call this. It's Father's foundation for time and for all that is related to it. And his 7-day week is the framework for his calendar that relates to his time and that to his people.
Yeah, when you think about it, what was the very first time that Yahweh gave his people? It was a whole week, because the first unit of time that he had was the day, the first day. A man wasn't created till the 6th day. The ordinances of heaven that we can observe time were on the 4th day. So man is created, and then he has the 7th day. So that's that 7-day chunk of time is the first blessing he bestowed upon man, really, is that 7-day chunk of time, because he created man, and then he said, let's have a Sabbath. That was like, all right, they haven't even done anything yet.
First whole day of humans was the Sabbath.
Right.
Right, that's right.
That's true.
We wanted to get that relationship built.
Let's have a relationship.
The book of,
Do I need to advance? I think I do.
yeah,
Yeah,
you do, right there.
Okay.
The book of Jubilees relates repeatedly to counts of 7. That's why the book of Jubilees specifies that the year will be 52 weeks of days, totaling to exactly 364 days. The weeks of days are full 7-day weeks, complete and intact. So 52 times 7 is the 364 days, never less. We know that an extra week, must be added on occasion to conform to the reality of the exact solar year, because our solar year does not match specifically to anything, any calendar, anywhere, anytime.
And that is called intercalation.
Intercalation, right? That's
Every calendar has to intercalate in some
Exactly.
way.
It could have been because of things being thrown off course.
Yes. What could have
right.
been
It's
that? The flood.
could have been a flood or something like that.
Well, it was
Altered the
it was
orbit.
the same kind of thing that caused the flood that occurred later. The last time it threw the moon and the sun out of sync. Basically, I mean, it was right after what Elior was saying about it causing all these judgments and things. It was a very short time after the Northern Kingdom was sent away. It was like 21 years after we were exiled of the Northern Kingdom, that all this, the breakage between the actual 30-day month I mean,
Okay.
the actual
Yeah.
30 days,
Uh-huh.
it actually was 30 days.
Is that when
There actually were.
Hezekiah, the sundial thing, or that would have been a little bit later, right? That would have been.
It was Hezekiah's, the time when the, I think it was Ahaz that was the sundial. I used to
Oh,
mix that
okay.
too. And that would have been maybe the prior one occasion to that, the sundial incident. But then when Hezekiah, when the Assyrian army was destroyed in one night, that was the.
Oh, they had that earthquake.
The final thing.
Oh.
And that was what, they think it was based on Mars, used to cross the path of.
Velikovsky or whatever his name.
Velikovsky theorized Venus, but it was Patton, Hatch, and Steinhauer developed the Mars thing in a
Yeah.
lot more detail. And they said everywhere in the world, they changed the calendars at that time.
Right.
They were out of sync for everybody. They said, what in the world is going on? We have to figure this out again. And so that's when the other stuff came into
So that's what
play.
we're living under.
But
Yeah.
I'm in the
Consequences
hopes,
of it.
that once the Northern Kingdom is fully returned, that's the time when they talk about.
Oh, we'll get our new heavens and new earth, right?
Yeah.
Maybe before.
I think in the kingdom, it's gonna be back in sync again. And,
Yeah.
That would
we won't
surely
have to
be
worry,
nice.
It'd be nice if we could be back in sync.
What does he mean by the sundial issue?
That's when he went back,
It went back
Is that
10
when they
degrees.
shut the sun down for a day?
Well, no, went back 10 degrees
It was
to
a
the day.
wall.
Shadow
Hezekiah.
went back. Days of Hezekiah.
The gravitation of Mars was pulling on, it came closer to the Earth than the moon, actually, a couple
Oh,
of
okay.
sometimes.
Right.
Not always, but, and then that final time, it was actually because it had encountered Venus just before that, it had a close encounter with Venus. It was on an inside flyby instead of an outside flyby, and it changed
Huh.
it pushed the Earth and Mars into their current orbit.
That sounds like a Planet X story.
It's similar. That might be
I wonder if that's what they
that
thought.
might be what brings it back into sync. I don't know.
Right, Planet X might bring things back. Yeah, if that happens, yeah, if something happens, might shake everything back into place.
Yeah, because then.
I will shake the heavens in.
I don't know. There's gonna be,
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's, I think it's gonna be a literal recalibrating of everything.
So I fit in the process of Haggai I just mentioned. a
That's
few
what I
minutes
just
ago.
said.
Yeah, that, yeah.
I would shake the
Shaking
heavens.
heavens and the
gonna
earth.
shake, yeah.
Yeah, I can fit
Well,
it.
what does it say? The earth will wobble or drunk like a drunken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
That
now go
was some of the
Yeah, we-
eyewitnesses.
We need to pull this back in and.
Yeah.
We're
it's,
gonna
I'm
do
sorry
this
for
one
both
time.
folks online. Hope you could hear all that.
That's okay.
But, yeah.
So the integrity though of the counts of seven is the very fabric of the
Right.
book of Jubilees. So we need to keep that in mind at all times. Likewise, the number 12 is special in Yah's eyes. It is associated with completion and it symbolizes totality and wholeness, the completion of Yah's purpose. The Bible repeatedly validates the sacredness of 12s as well. That's why we have 12 months and not 13. There are 7 days in the week, 12 months in the year, 7 lamps in the menorah, and 12 loaves of bread on the table of showbread. There is never supposed to be more or less than 12 months in the year. The typical Zedekiah year is 364 days long. Pardon?
12 tribes.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, why all what's with all the 12s and 7s in scripture? I mean, what's that all about, huh?
There's no time today to work with this much more, but it is all in the book.
Yeah.
We actually, Bill, figured something out as we were going through this that's very unique and very interesting that's in the book about the menorah and the table of showbread and how it relates to the calendar. Dividing this by 4, we find that the relatively equidistant seasonal lengths are 91 days each. Each season can be divided then into 13 complete weeks. So there again, you got your 7-day weeks fully implemented within the seasons. When moving from one season to another and one year to another, the flow of the sacred sevens is never to be disrupted. Then we have the Tekafah, which is after each completion of 3 months or 90 days, we add the Tekafah day to make 91 days.
We
for the
don't add it,
season.
it's there.
Yeah, you're right.
We figure it.
We include it when we work with the calendar because it is a part of the sequence to get the calendar to flow properly. And it doesn't belong to a month. It is between the months. And it's definitely counted though as a day of the year in its corresponding week. It is a marker to delineate the end of the season being a transition to the next season. And the Hebrew word for circuit that we saw in our Psalms 19:6 is tekufah. That's the
Wow.
word in
You
Psalms
can't make this stuff up.
19:6. Exactly.
Wow.
So his going forth is from the end of heaven, and his circuit or tekufah unto the ends of it. And there is nothing hid from the heat thereof. This tekufah circuit completes the quarterly cycle and begins the new one.
Now, do you want to see the graphic again online? I know we've got it here for everybody here in the room to see. I mean, what we're talking about is on that
Here, let me
graphic
get
that
it.
we
Where you can see the intercalary days.
Yes.
Quick.
Yeah.
Calorie days? They're not calorie days, are they?
Not high calorie, low calorie.
Mosquito. Where can they see it? I don't.
Okay,
I still could read it.
we don't have a pointer, but
these are the intercalary, these heavy lines are the tabs are the days of Tekufah.
Those are your 4
Right.
intercalary.
So they're marked by a tab. They're not a part of a month. We used to call them a 31st day, and that's incorrect.
inaccurate.
That's inaccurate.
Is
Yeah.
this picture on your website?
No, we just
No.
got this. We just did this, just made it. So we'll be getting it on the
Just put
website.
it today.
We just, yeah, we did that.
First ones to see this.
We just made this, yeah, just got this done. I think it just got delivered on April 1st, actually. We got it. So we're gonna be making it available on the website.
Somebody's want to get a picture, hold it up.
You said that the Takufa is not counted to any of the months.
Right.
But Yahweh created only 7 days in a week. So
Right.
is that not an extra day?
No, it's not, it's part of a week.
No, it's in the book of Jubilees and Enoch. It explains it.
It's
Still part of the 7th day, even though it's not part of the month.
Right.
You know,
right. You
That's because
have
we're
52 weeks in the year.
27.
You have 52 weeks in the year. It's still a day that exists in that year, and it's part of one of those 52 weeks. But the months are simply a matter of counting 30 days. And then when you get to the end of that 3rd month, that day is there. It exists.
Yes.
Tekufah is there.
12
It's not a part of the month before or after. It's its own independent, separate entity.
12 and 7 do
It's
not
not-
divide.
it's part of the
evenly,
week.
so You're going to have an
Right.
adjustment to make it work.
So Takufa or
No, it's just that it's
is
a,
work day?
it comes on, it's always on a Tuesday because it always
Your day,
follows.
what do you do?
Well,
this is.
Your day to get checked, what do you do?
other,
Or you don't because they use the system.
It makes sense to
I
me if it's
mean,
part of the
yeah.
30 days,
Okay.
part of the 30
We'll
days of the
we'll catch
last
it
month.
later.
yeah,
Yes.
if you, we'll be getting into it a little bit more, but on this graphic here,
Now we
now
do,
we gotta cover up Karen.
that's good. But we do request that.
You will not be covered up.
We do request that one voice at a time for the people online. We've been at the other end of that, and it's very
Yes, yeah.
distracting and
Well, yeah,
problematic.
Susie knows that.
So kind of raise your hand.
Okay, online, if you can see this, we got 3 months of days going across. This is a season right here. Or here's our beginning, our news. I don't know if I can, okay, I'll go at the bottom here. I think where they can, or maybe here where you can see better online. 3 days of 30 months. And then this 30th, this last month, this is a day out of, that's the Tekufah going into the beginning. This is month 9 going into month 10. These are 30-day months. This day is very much a part of the year. You see this at the end of each, see this is each quarter of the year. And as we're showing here, that's a quarter, right? And it ends with a Tekufah. So that's the marker. The day is very much a part of this week. It always, a calendar week. A week that starts on a Wednesday and every calendar week ends on a Tuesday. And then, so there's your first Sabbath. You get 52 Sabbaths. A week, of course, starts on weekday 1. But on the calendar, when you start marking time here, it starts on a weekday 4. And so every quarter ends on a weekday 3. And the next quarter repeats the same pattern of the quarter before. So it's amazing how it all lines up like that. It's very simple, yeah, and it's very symmetrical. I mean, it's like God really designed it to be perfect in a way.
And basically, like the start of the new like section is always kind of based on like the weekday 4, which is when time was created.
Right. Each one of these seasons always belongs or begins on a weekday 4. There's Feast of Trumpets, and these are just regular Memorial Chodesh. We observe
So
them.
every season starts on a weekday 4.
Right.
Because that's the transitional day, which was when.
Well,
time was
Tuesday's the
created.
transitional day,
Yeah.
but
It's when time was created in Genesis.
Right.
basically.
That's
And
when
that was all
observable
correlated
time.
back to the start of every season.
You want me to put it back?
Okay.
okay,
Now I'll bring it.
yeah, I will let Karen have.
So then there's always 1 week. where you-
Okay, now, this may be out of place, but when we go into the scriptures and we read about the moons, did that come from the Babylonian system? Is that inherently added to the scriptures?
Like Egypt and Babylon.
Okay, there
Well-
are moon cycles that we talked about, and those cycles are important maybe for agricultural.
See, they had more than
purposes.
one calendar.
There were more than one calendar.
They did keep track of the
Lois.
moon too.
They
It depends what
actually,
I'm reading as to whether or not it's.
right, and they tracked both and kept them side by side, but they do not integrate because the timing will not work.
I guess that's
Right.
why I have 2 lobes, one for each calendar.
Well, the moon calendar was very important for other things.
Really?
We don't know exactly what all we haven't researched that enough to know exactly how that all worked in Qumran, but they have found records of priestly courses and other things that went by the moon. But as far as the temple calendar, the liturgical calendar for feast keeping and all that,
Was the solar.
was this solar based, yeah.
Okay, so I think we're ready for this.
Um,
Break.
okay.
See if that brings up.
Oh, the
Enoch.
book of, yeah, from the book. Okay, now this is from the book of Enoch.
Okay, yes, this is, and it's chapter 75. The leaders of the heads of thousands were all the creation, all over the stars, have to do these 4 days that are added are not separated from their position according to the calendar or the calculation of the year. They serve as the 4 days that are not reckoned in the calculation of the year, but they are a part of the year, but they are separate at the end of each season. It's a little confusing. That's the worst part of trying to figure out this calendar. But
Well-
when you put it together, it flows. Just
You just have to understand their way of thinking about things was based on the movements of the sky. And so they're counting, they weren't it's like they didn't have a computer. Everything wasn't presented on paper to them. They were relating things by how they experienced them. So then they put it into terms that were more precise to be able to go by. Whereas we're looking at it from a logical perspective that is current day way of thinking, trying to understand what they were doing. And so to us, having this day out of this day that's not a part of a month doesn't make sense. But to them, they didn't care. I
other
mean,
cultures fully understood this.
Yeah.
It was not, it's just new to us because we don't see it.
see, we have to
And
put things in a
today.
box and they have to fit in a certain slot or else it doesn't work.
Does not Farmer Almanac has some sort of connection with this too? I'm not sure because I thought about that.
They do on the lunar, from the
On the
lunar
way, just the lunar,
aspect,
okay.
yeah. But they are not separated from their position according to the calculation of the year is important because you can't add them just anywhere.
Right.
That's what they're saying
Right.
here by not separating them from their position. Their position is at 3 months.
See, they maintain an integrity of the 7-day weeks and seasons. Now, in reality, your seasons are not all 91 days. They vary a little bit. So the actual equinox and solstice comes either a couple days before, or after, sometimes right on the day of Tekufa, but not always. But it's always close, and we stay in sync. This is called a schematic. It's a framework. It's a schematic calendar that's easy to go by. It is not based on observation of the actual events happening in the sky. So they do come a little bit here or there, a day or two from before or after. Some people have a problem with that because it doesn't line up perfectly. But it does in an overall sense. It's a schematic of what's really going on. We have another
Is it this one?
handout. No, Telfair plaque.
Well, where did it go? I had them all
The
here.
picture of
Oh, here
there
it
it
is.
is.
Here it is. Never mind. That's the one. This is my copy. Never mind. Okay. Yeah, I'll give you yours. Thank you.
Okay. We're gonna move ahead here into this Telfar plaque. We have bookmarks for our calendar book that feature the picture you see on the front of this handout.
I have lost mine and I've been wanting it so bad.
Well, we got
We got some.
extra bookmarks, so get you another one.
Pass those
If
around
you
in your
were-
area.
If you ordered a book on Amazon, it did not come with one, please get one.
Yeah, we try to include one with every book.
Yeah,
Are y'all getting there?
Okay, about time to,
I think we need to just take a little break here.
Yeah, we're ready.
We need to-
It's noon.
we
so
really
I think
need
this
to
will be
wrap
good.
it up here.
It's actually 12:15. So let's see, maybe we pick it up.
Yeah,
tomorrow
this
morning.
is a
Alright.
good breaking point.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna stop the recording right now and give some instruction here. For those online, we're gonna take a break till 1 o'clock.
Wait, is that where y'all going to break?
no.
No.
No, let's not break it.
No,
we
that's- we gotta.
We need to.
No, it's 12:15 and we'll pick it back up
We gotta-
in 45 minutes.
We need to hustle.
I'm trying to figure out what part.
And,
two is.
So,
About hungry?